Actually, I'm taking Veronica instead, my husband announced as I stood at the airport curbside pickup, keys dangling from my fingers and my heart hammering with excitement. She's more exciting than you'll ever be. My name is Celeste Morgan, and I'm 39 years old. I work as a marketing director for Crimson Harbor Group, a boutique hospitality consulting firm in Portland, Oregon. For the past 3 months, I had been planning what I thought would be the perfect surprise for our 10th wedding anniversary. A week-long romantic getaway to Italy that had cost me nearly $15,000 of my own money. Every detail had been meticulously arranged. First-class flights, a luxury villa overlooking the Arno River in Florence, private vineyard tours through Tuscany, and reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants I had researched for weeks. I had been so proud of myself, so excited to see the look on Thomas's face when I revealed the surprise. I imagined him sweeping me into his arms, telling me how thoughtful I was, how much he loved me. Instead, he stood there with his secretary Veronica, a 26-year-old blonde who wore skirts that barely covered her thighs and laughed at everything Thomas said like he was the most brilliant man alive. "You?" Thomas continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "You'd just drag me to museums and talk about architecture. This trip deserves some real fun." Veronica giggled beside him, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on his arm. She was wearing the kind of outfit I used to wear before marriage, before I started prioritizing comfort over style, before I let myself become what Thomas apparently considered predictable. I stood there for a moment, processing what was happening. The man I had loved for 13 years, married for 10, was essentially telling me I wasn't worth the surprise I had spent months planning for him. He was taking another woman on our anniversary trip, using my money, my arrangements, my thoughtful gestures to romance someone else. "The car service will be here any minute," Thomas said, checking his watch with the casual indifference of someone discussing the weather. "You should probably head home. Maybe order takeout and watch one of those period dramas you love so much." Something cold settled in my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet, but something sharper and more dangerous. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing the face of the man I had once believed would love me forever. His dismissive smile, the way he barely met my eyes, the casual cruelty in his voice. It was like seeing him clearly for the first time in years. I didn't say anything. I simply nodded, handed him the printed itinerary I had so carefully prepared, and watched them drive away in the town car I had booked, their laughter echoing through the tinted windows as they disappeared toward the airport. The drive home from the airport felt surreal, like I was floating outside my own body watching someone else's life fall apart. I had met Thomas 14 years ago at a wine tasting in downtown Portland. He was charming, ambitious, and had this way of making me feel like the most interesting woman in the room. He worked for a mid-sized investment firm, climbing the corporate ladder with the kind of ruthless determination I found attractive at 25. Our courtship had been a whirlwind of romantic dinners, weekend getaways, and grand gestures that made me feel cherished. He proposed on Christmas morning with a 2-carat diamond ring and promises of a beautiful future together. For the first few years of marriage, I thought we were building something special, a partnership based on love, respect, and shared dreams. But somewhere along the way, things had shifted. Thomas's ambition had evolved into arrogance, his confidence into condescension. He started working longer hours, spending more time with colleagues, and treating our home like a hotel where he occasionally slept. I had attributed the distance to stress, to the pressures of his job, to the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. I told myself that all marriages went through rough patches. Looking back now, I could see the warning signs I had chosen to ignore. The way he rolled his eyes when I talked about my work. The subtle put-downs disguised as jokes at dinner parties. The increasing frequency with which he mentioned Veronica, how smart she was, how efficient, how she really understood the business in ways that most people didn't. I had even met her at the company holiday party 6 months ago, watching as she hung on Thomas's every word and laughed just a little too loudly at his stories. She's very young, I had mentioned to Thomas on the drive home that night. Youth brings fresh perspective, he had replied. Something people our age sometimes forget. Our age. As if 39 was ancient. As if I had somehow failed by not remaining frozen at 26 forever. The signs had been there, but I had been too invested in the fairy tale to see them clearly. I had spent so much energy trying to be the perfect wife, cooking elaborate dinners, maintaining a beautiful home, supporting his career while building my own, that I had failed to notice he had stopped seeing me as a partner and started viewing me as an obligation. As I pulled into our driveway, I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the house we had bought together 5 years ago. The garden I had lovingly cultivated, the front door I had painted sage green because Thomas said it was sophisticated, the bay window where I had imagined we might someday watch our children play in the yard. It all felt like evidence of a life I had been living alone. But beneath the hurt and humiliation, something else was stirring. Something that felt suspiciously like relief, mixed with a cold, calculating fury that surprised me with its intensity. I walked into our house and immediately called my travel agent, Patricia, who had helped me arrange every detail of the Italian itinerary. My hands were remarkably steady as I dialed her number, my voice calm and professional when she answered. Patricia, it's Celeste Morgan. I need to make some changes to the Italy booking we discussed. Of course, dear. What can I help you with? I need to transfer everything from my husband's name to mine. The flights, the villa, the car service, the restaurant reservations, everything. There was a pause. Oh my, is everything all right? Everything is perfect, I said, and for the first time in hours, I meant it. How quickly can you make these changes? Well, since everything was booked under your credit card anyway, it should be quite straightforward. I can have it all transferred within the hour. Should I cancel Mr. Morgan's ticket? Yes, please. And add a guest under my name instead, Catherine Webb. Catherine was my college roommate, a successful architect who had been telling me for years that I needed to take more time for myself. She had just finished a major project and had mentioned she was desperately in need of a vacation. I knew she would drop everything for a spontaneous trip to Italy, especially when she heard the circumstances. After hanging up with Patricia, I called Catherine. She answered on the second ring. Celeste, this is a surprise. Aren't you supposed to be getting ready for your romantic Italian getaway? Change of plans, I said. How would you like to spend a week in Tuscany? First-class flights, luxury villa, wine tours, the works. Are you serious? What happened to Thomas? I gave her the abbreviated version of the afternoon's events. Catherine's response was immediate and colorful, involving several words that would have made Thomas clutch his pearls and lecture her about professionalism. That absolute bastard, she finished. Of course I'll come. When do we leave? Flight's at 6 tonight. Can you make it? I'll be at the airport in 3 hours with my passport and a strong desire to drink Italian wine while plotting creative revenge scenarios. After hanging up with Catherine, I sat in my living room and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pure, unadulterated excitement. Not the anxious anticipation I had been feeling about surprising Thomas, but genuine joy at the prospect of an adventure with my best friend. I spent the next 2 hours packing, choosing clothes I actually wanted to wear instead of outfits I thought would please my husband. I included the red dress Thomas had always hated, saying it was too bold for someone my age. I packed the hiking boots he claimed were unfeminine, the vintage Leica camera he said made me look pretentious, and the collection of art history books he dismissed as boring. By 4 o'clock, I was ready. By 5, I was at the airport, boarding pass in hand, watching Thomas's phone number flash repeatedly on my screen as I let every call go to voicemail. The first-class cabin felt like a cocoon of luxury as Catherine and I settled into our seats with champagne flutes in hand. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was finally taking the romantic Italian vacation I had dreamed about, just not with the person I had originally planned to share it with. So, Tell me everything, Catherine said, tucking her legs under her as the plane taxied toward the runway. Start from the beginning and don't leave out any details. I want to understand exactly how we got from surprise anniversary trip to girls' weekend in Tuscany, while your husband is presumably stranded at the airport. I told her the whole story, from the months of careful planning to Thomas's casual cruelty at the curbside pickup. Catherine listened with the kind of focused attention that reminded me why we had remained close friends, despite living in different cities for the past 15 years. You know what the worst part is? I said, swirling the champagne in my glass. I wasn't even surprised. Hurt, humiliated, angry, yes, but not surprised. I think I've known for months that something was wrong, that he was pulling away. I just kept telling myself it was temporary, that if I tried harder, planned better, loved more perfectly, things would go back to how they used to be. Catherine reached over and squeezed my hand. You know that's not how love works, right? Real love doesn't require you to diminish yourself to make someone else comfortable. I know that intellectually. But when you're living it, when you're watching your marriage slowly dissolve, and you can't figure out what you did wrong. I trailed off, staring out the window as Portland's lights grew smaller below us. What you did wrong was marry a man who stopped seeing you as a person, Catherine said bluntly. From what you've told me, Thomas has been treating you like a supporting character in his life story for years. The fact that he brought his secretary on your anniversary trip isn't the problem. It's just the symptom. My phone buzzed with another call from Thomas. I glanced at the screen and saw that I had missed 17 calls in the past 2 hours. The voicemails were piling up, each one probably more frantic than the last. Aren't you curious what he's saying? Catherine asked, nodding toward my phone. Not particularly. I can imagine. He's probably realized by now that their names aren't on any of the reservations, that the car service won't show up, that the villa has no record of their booking. He's calling to yell at me, to demand I fix what I've supposedly broken. You transferred everything to your name? Every last detail. The flights were the only thing I couldn't change since they were already in the air, but everything else, the villa, the car service, the restaurant reservations, the wine tours, even the private chef I hired for 2 dinners, it's all under my name now. Catherine started laughing, a delighted sound that drew glances from other passengers. Oh my God, Celeste. They're going to land in Florence with nothing but the clothes on their backs and whatever cash they brought. No hotel, no transportation, no plans. Thomas always prided himself on being able to handle any situation, I said. Let's see how he handles this one. The flight attendant came by to refill our champagne, and I felt something loosening in my chest, a tension I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't worried about Thomas's reaction to something I'd done. I wasn't calculating how to phrase things to avoid his disapproval, wasn't anticipating his criticism or preparing my defenses. You know what the really crazy part is? I said to Catherine as we settled in for the long flight ahead. I feel more like myself right now than I have in years. Is that terrible? That's not terrible, Catherine said firmly. That's called waking up. We landed in Florence at 7 a.m. local time, and I felt like I was stepping into a different version of my life. The morning light was golden and warm. The air smelled of coffee and ancient stones, and everything around me felt vibrant and alive, in a way that made me realize how gray my world had become. Catherine and I breezed through customs and found our driver waiting with a sign bearing my name. Luigi was exactly what I had hoped for when I booked him, charming, knowledgeable, and delighted to be driving 2 American women who were clearly ready for an adventure. Signora Morgan, he said with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Welcome to Firenze. I have been looking forward to this week. Your villa is magnificent. You will love it. The drive through Florence was breathtaking. We wound through narrow streets lined with Renaissance buildings, past the Duomo rising majestically against the morning sky, over the Ponte Vecchio with its glittering jewelry shops. Catherine pressed her face to the window like a child, pointing out architectural details and snapping photos with her phone. "I can't believe you planned all this, and we're going to spend it listening to Thomas complain about walking too much and wanting to find American food," she said. My phone had been buzzing continuously since we landed. The missed calls were now in the 30s, and the voicemail icon showed I had more messages than I could count. As we pulled up to the villa, curiosity finally got the better of me. "You know what?" I said to Catherine. "I think I'm ready to hear what Thomas has to say." I played the first voicemail on speaker as Luigi carried our bags to the villa's entrance. "Celeste, what the hell is going on? We got to the hotel and they're saying they have no reservation under my name. There's obviously been some kind of mistake. Call me back immediately." The second message. "This is insane. The car service never showed up. And now the hotel is saying everything is booked under your name instead of mine. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you need to fix this right now." By the fifth message, Thomas's voice had taken on the sharp edge I knew meant he was truly rattled. "Celeste, I know you're getting these messages. We're stuck at the airport with nowhere to go, and no way to reach the contacts on this itinerary because everything has your name on it. This is childish and vindictive, and you're ruining what was supposed to be a nice vacation." Catherine was practically in tears from laughing. "Oh, this is better than any revenge movie I've ever seen. He's completely helpless without your organizational skills." The 10th message was where things got interesting. Thomas's voice was different, smaller, less commanding. "Look, maybe I was hasty earlier. Maybe we can work something out. Veronica and I are willing to share the accommodations with you. We could all figure this out together." "Share the accommodations?" Catherine repeated incredulously. "He wants you to fund a vacation where you get to watch him romance his secretary?" The messages continued to escalate from there. Angry demands gave way to frustrated bargaining, which evolved into something approaching panic. In the final message, left just 20 minutes before we listened, Thomas's voice was tight, with barely controlled desperation. "Celeste, I'm begging you. We're sitting in the airport with no hotel, no car, no plan. Veronica is crying, and I look like an idiot. Please, just call me back. We can talk about this. We can fix this." I looked at Catherine, who was wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. Then, I looked at the stunning villa before us, with its terracotta roof and climbing roses, its view of the Arno River glittering in the morning sun. "You know what?" I said, turning my phone to silent and dropping it into my purse. "I think I'm going to let them figure it out." The villa exceeded even my carefully researched expectations. It was a converted 16th century palazzo, with frescoed ceilings, marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto terraces overlooking the river. Our suite had a private balcony, where we could see the Ponte Vecchio in the distance, and the afternoon light painted everything in shades of gold and amber that made me understand why artists had been coming to Florence for centuries. Catherine immediately claimed the chaise lounge on the balcony and declared her intention to spend the afternoon reading and drinking wine. I was unpacking when the villa's concierge, a sophisticated woman named Francesca, knocked on our door. "Signora Morgan, I hope you are settling in well. I wanted to personally welcome you and confirm your arrangements for the week." "Everything looks perfect," I said, meaning it. "Wonderful. I also wanted to mention that we received several phone calls this morning from someone claiming to be your husband, asking about your reservation. He seemed quite agitated. We told him, as per our policy, that we cannot discuss guest information with unauthorized parties." Catherine looked up from her book with interest. "He called the villa directly?" "Multiple times," Francesca confirmed. "He was insistent that there had been some mistake, that he was supposed to be staying here instead of you. Our staff was quite confused, as all our correspondence has been with Signora Morgan exclusively." I felt a flush of satisfaction at the thought of Thomas trying to convince the villa staff that he, not I, deserved to be here. The man who had dismissed my planning abilities was now discovering exactly how thorough I had been. "If he calls again, please don't feel obligated to take the calls," I said, Of course, your privacy is our priority. After Francesca left, Catherine and I spent the afternoon exploring the villa's gardens and sampling the welcome spread of local cheeses, cured meats, and wine that had been prepared for us. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete contentment. My phone continued to buzz occasionally, but I had learned to ignore it. Each message from Thomas felt like it was coming from a different lifetime, from a version of myself who had believed that love meant making herself smaller to accommodate someone else's ego. "Can I ask you something?" Catherine said as we shared a bottle of Chianti on the terrace. "Are you going to divorce him?" I considered the question seriously. 24 hours ago, I would have been horrified by the suggestion. Despite our problems, I had still been committed to the idea of our marriage, to the belief that we could work through anything if we just tried hard enough. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I know I can't go back to being the person I was yesterday. I can't pretend that what happened at the airport was just a misunderstanding or a moment of poor judgment. Thomas showed me exactly how he sees me, how he values me, and I can't unknow that." "What about Veronica?" "What about her? She's 26 years old and infatuated with a married man who just proved he's willing to humiliate his wife for her entertainment. She'll figure out soon enough what kind of person she's involved with." Catherine raised her glass. "To figuring things out." "To figuring things out," I agreed, clinking my glass against hers as the lights of Florence began to twinkle below us. That night, I slept better than I had in months, lulled by the sound of the river and the knowledge that, for the first time in years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning brought a message that changed everything. I was having breakfast on the terrace with Catherine when my phone chimed with a text from an unknown Italian number. "Mrs. Morgan, this is Veronica. Please, I need to talk to you. Thomas won't tell me how to reach you, but I got your number from his phone. We're in a terrible situation." I showed the message to Catherine, who nearly choked on her espresso. "She's texting you? The audacity of this girl is actually impressive." Another message followed immediately. "We've been sleeping in the airport for 2 days. Thomas spent all his cash trying to book us into hotels, but everything is full because of some festival. I'm supposed to be back at work tomorrow, but we can't even get flights home without the return tickets that are apparently in your name. Please, I'm begging you." I stared at the messages, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. This was exactly the chaos I had hoped Thomas would experience. But another part of me, the part that had been trained by years of marriage to smooth over problems and take care of everyone, felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for Veronica. "Are you going to respond?" Catherine asked. "I'm thinking about it." A third message arrived. "I know what we did was wrong. I know Thomas treated you horribly. But I'm just a secretary who thought she was going on a nice vacation with a successful man. I didn't know it was your anniversary trip until we were already on the plane. Please don't punish me for his mistakes." That message stopped me cold. Thomas hadn't even told Veronica it was our anniversary trip. He had let her believe it was just a casual vacation, had allowed her to participate in humiliating me without even having the courtesy to explain what she was participating in. "Now I'm definitely responding," I said, my fingers moving across the phone's keyboard. "Veronica, you're right that you didn't deserve to be lied to about what this trip was. Thomas should have told you it was our 10th anniversary vacation. That said, you're also a grown woman who chose to go away with a married man. I hope this experience teaches you to ask better questions about the situations you involve yourself in." I paused, then added, "Your return flights are at the American Airlines desk under confirmation number 7A8B9C. They leave tonight at 6 p.m. Don't miss them." Catherine watched me send the message with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're giving them the flights home?" "I'm giving her the flights home. She's 26 and made a stupid decision, but she doesn't deserve to be stranded in a foreign country because of it. Thomas, on the other hand, can figure out his own way back." My phone rang almost immediately. Thomas's number. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message on speaker. Celeste, thank God Veronica was able to reach you. Look, this has gone far enough. We need to talk about this like adults. I made a mistake, but you're being completely unreasonable. We're married, for Christ's sake. You can't just leave your husband stranded in Italy. Catherine snorted. Watch her. The phone rang again. This time I answered. Hello, Thomas. Celeste. Finally. Listen, we need to meet. We need to talk about this situation and figure out how to move forward. I admit I handled things poorly at the airport, but... Thomas, I interrupted, my voice calmer than I felt. I gave Veronica the information for your return flights. She can go home tonight. You, however, are not welcome on those flights. What are you talking about? Those are my tickets. Actually, they're my tickets. I bought them, I planned them, and I transferred them to my name. I've graciously allowed Veronica to use one of them. The other one is mine. There was a long pause. So what am I supposed to do? I suggest you call your secretary and ask her to book you a new flight home. Oh wait, your secretary is standing right next to you, and she'll be on a plane to Portland in 6 hours. Celeste, you can't be serious about this. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Have a safe trip home, Thomas. Eventually. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. Catherine raised her wine glass. Now that, she said, was beautiful. As I reflected on my journey from devoted wife to woman reclaiming her power, I realized that sometimes the most profound revenge isn't about destruction. It's about discovery, about finding the strength to value yourself exactly as much as you've been valuing everyone else.